Good afternoon. Hi everyone, good afternoon. Welcome to DIYLaw Ask Me Anything session, the AMA session 1.0. Today with us online, we have our co-founder at DIYLaw Technologies Limited, Delea. She's also co-founder at the Longer. Just say hi.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining me today.
Yeah. Also with us, we have the co-founder at the Longer Practice, and she's also co-founder at DIYLaw Technologies Limited, Odoluwa Longer. Odo, say hi.
Hello, everyone, and thanks for joining early and helping us to start punctually.
Great. My name is Olariwa Judeji Basharam. I will be your host for today. I must mention Happy World Entrepreneurs Day. I found that today is Happy World Entrepreneurs Day, so Happy World Entrepreneurs Day, everyone. We celebrate ourselves today. So just a few things to note. Please, if you have questions or comments in the course of the session, please make use of the chat box below to drop your comments and your questions. Also, the session is being recorded, so we'll provide a link to the recording after the session. So without further ado, let's just get right into the session. Funkola, this is for you. We have a question from Ade Doyin. She's asking, do I need to register a business I'm running as a student, and will I be obligated to pay tax?
Hi, thanks, Larry. Hello, Ade Doyin. Thanks for your question. I would say that it doesn't matter if you are a student, if your business is part-time or if it's full-time, but the moment you start to operate as a separate person from yourself, you start to provide services, you start to sell products, it's advisable that you register your business. You don't necessarily have to incorporate a company with a share capital, but you can register as a business name depending on the nature of the business that you're running. And I have to mention that the moment you register your business, whether as a business name or an incorporated company, a limited liability company, you have to start, you have tax obligations that you have to start to meet. So within 6 months of registering your business, you have to register for your tax identification number, as well as for VAT remittance, collection and remittance to the government. And even if you make sales or you don't make any sales, you have to file your returns monthly to the relevant tax authorities. So yes, in a nutshell, whether as a student or a full-time entrepreneur, you have to register. It's advisable to register your business, obviously to protect yourself, to give it some semblance of formality. And the moment that you have registered within 6 months, you have to register for your taxes. Sorry, Larry, you're on mute, so we didn't hear you.
You're still on mute.
I just unmuted myself.
We can hear you.
Okay, great. So we have another question similar to what Ade Doyin asked. It's from Tobrise. He's asking, how do I regularize payment of my outstanding TIN and VAT for a newly registered business after it has gradually started? I guess he's having some issues or some outstanding documents to complete the processing of his TIN and just wants to know how he can regularize that after he does get his TIN.
So okay. If you find yourself in a situation where you have registered, you registered your company, but you didn't register for your TIN and VAT within 6 months, you can regularize. So there's no issue with that. However, you might have to pay a penalty. So you go ahead to your nearest tax office or you can engage DIYLaw services, obtain your tax identification number. And at the point of registering, before your VAT letter is issued, your penalty for the time that you haven't, for the time that had passed where you hadn't registered for your taxes will be computed. It's typically about 5,000 Naira a month for all the months that you didn't remit or register. That's after the 6 months grace period. And then you pay your penalty, and then you can continue to remit, collect taxes, remit taxes, file your returns monthly after that. Sorry again, Larry, you're on mute.
Okay. Thank you so much, Funkola. We have this question from Dante. Odun, I'll direct this question to you. He's asking, is it beneficial to register and incorporate overseas, and what would be the best method? Or approach? And then we also have a question from Simeon. It's similar to the first question from Dante. He says, where he has registered a company in the US while he's here in Nigeria, how would the Nigerian government tax that company in the US? Odun, could you please help us with answers to this?
Okay, so with regards to incorporating or setting up a company outside the country, it has to be motivated by a need. We would not recommend, I would not personally recommend that you register a company if there's no business need. Because just as you have obligations when you register a company in Nigeria, in whatever entity abroad that you register a company, you will also have obligations. You will have filing obligations. You will have maintenance obligations. So if you do not have a reason to, maybe you want to do business in that country, or maybe for investment reasons, you do not need to register abroad. But there are different factors that determine registering abroad. One of them is if you need to do a business in a country, maybe you want to open a payment account or get access to some software that is difficult to get as a Nigerian company, or whether you want to raise funds and your investors require that you register abroad. In terms of tax filing, if depending on the country you're registered to, I think this was US, if the country has a double tax treaty with Nigeria, there's something called a double taxation treaty, which means that you can net off taxes. So for instance, if that country you have paid off, in that country you've paid 10% tax, when you come to Nigeria, you'll be doing 30%, which is the company's income tax, minus 20% tax, and vice versa. But it all depends on if there's a double taxation treaty. Where there's the double taxation treaty, and then you are obliged to pay taxes, whatever taxes that you've earned or that you're accountable for in that country and both in Nigeria. Your tax obligations for each country, for each entity is different, and they're not related.
Thank you so much, Odun, for shedding more light on that area. So we have this question, is in two parts, and I will direct it to both Funkola and Odun, but Funkola will go first. We have a question from Rabia. She wants to know, how do I patent my formulas? And then she's also asking, how do I get a NAFDAC number?
Okay. With patents, you have to make an application to the Patents Registry under the Ministry of Trade and Investments. But I have to say that before you can patent something, it has to be something that's novel and has never been done before, or an improvement on an existing invention. So with formulas, you're going to have to reduce everything into writing just the same way you would do with the hardware. You reduce everything into writing, what goes into your patent. So the thing about registering patents is you divulge all of the information, so you can't have the information secret. So that's what the patent registration is protecting, all of the information that goes into making your formula, your product, or the hardware, or whatever it is that you've invented. So you register, you provide all of this information in written formats. It has to already exist. You can't patent an idea or something that you haven't, or something that can't be touched or can't be seen. So the formulation already has to exist or can easily be made, because you might be asked to put forward a sample for examination by the Patents Registry. If there is no opposition, if it does sound novel and doesn't look like it's something that is common and anybody else can do, and it will be an unfair advantage to give you patent rights over it, then your patent will be registered. And your patent is registrable, I believe, for 7 years. Sorry, I'm not really sure about that. I believe 7 years, but it's not renewable. And the whole sense of not renewing a patent is because they want people, it fosters research and development. You want people to be able to improve or recreate and sort of innovate and add, make an improvement, or even on what you've registered. So that's pretty much what it is about registering a patent. But yes, you can patent your formulas. You have to reduce it into writing, including all of the secrets and specifications, and present it for filing. If there's no opposition, you get your certificates. How do you go about NAFDAC registration? NAFDAC registration, you pretty much have to, there's a lot of documentation you have to provide. which includes trademark registration. So whatever it is that you're registering, a product, if it's food, again, with NAFDAC, it's usually food or pharmaceuticals, drugs, and things like that. You will already have the products, you trademark the name, you present them with an acceptance of trademark filing or a trademark certificate if that's already completed. There are inspections that NAFDAC has to do. So they typically come to the site just to make sure that it meets some health and safety specifications. So that with NAFDAC, there are some specifications on what your building or where you work out of should look like. So you have to have a separate room for, say, mixing your formulation, a separate room for packaging, and then distribution and all of that. You just need to make sure that things are safe for administration. You know, it's food and it's drugs. So NAFDAC does the inspection. If you pass all of that, and they also see that you're not infringing on anybody's like current registration, you're not using someone else's product, as well as your drugs and food or chemical compositions are safe for the general public, then you'll get your NAFDAC registration number. Sorry again, Larry.
Thank you so much.
Sorry, it's gone muted again.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much, Funkola, for that, for shedding so much light on it. I must mention at this point, I hope we have our pens and papers and we're taking notes and writing. Also, these questions have been pre-asked by our audience. We had pulled this question some weeks back. So these are not just questions that were drawing from the air. They are questions asked by real people and sent to us before this event. Okay, so I have this question for you, Odu. Rabiat is still asking, would like to know what to look out for when going into a business agreement with someone.
Okay, so there's some fundamental things that, irrespective of what agreement you're going into, you should look at. And there's some things that depend on transactions, you know, per transaction, per what the agreement is about. But I'll just speak to the general things. So if you're going into any business agreement with someone, obviously it is only, you must have it documented. You know, it's very fundamental that you, even if you do not sign an agreement, I highly recommend you sign an agreement, but you know, the courts will accept paper napkin, or what do we call it, napkin agreements. So email suffices and all. Now, for an agreement to be valid, there are certain fundamentals. There must be an offer, there must be an acceptance, and there must be consideration. An offer is someone is saying, I am offering you an opportunity to do this, and the other person saying I'm agreeing. So once two parties come together to contract on something, there's that offer, there's that meeting of minds, and there's offer and acceptance. Now, a consideration means that there has to be value exchanged. So it's either you're exchanging services or you're exchanging money. Most times the consideration is money, but it could be services, and it could be, consideration does not have to be market value. As long as the parties are agreed, consideration can be #1 if both parties are fine. So it is essential for a contract to be valid, so for a business agreement to be valid, that all those three components exist. The other thing you want to look at is make sure that your obligations are stated. Each party has their obligation expressly stated. What is party A doing? What is party B doing? You also want to say, what are the payment terms? Is someone paying, or are we sharing revenue? Is it fee sharing? Is it profit sharing? So that also has to be very clear. Then, are there confidential obligations? Are there things we need to keep confidential, or can we just talk about it to the public? You also want to talk about, are there any, if there's going to be any exchange of intellectual property, how is that administered? Is one person going to own it, or are we owning it together, or does each person retain their intellectual property? You also look into things like jurisdiction. If there's a dispute, who do we go to? Where do we go to? Do we go to a court of law, or do we go to a mediator, or do we go to an arbitrator? Then do we sort it here in Nigeria, or do we travel to do it? Do we do it in England? Then what laws guide? Now, generally, the laws of contracts allow parties to determine how they want to contract, as long as it's not illegal, as long as it's not criminal, it's not controversing anything. Parties, so you can both be Nigerians and decide that you want your country of jurisdiction to be Malaysia or anything. It's fine to choose. So basically, those are the fundamentals that you want to look out for with the business agreements. Now, the other things now depend on the specifics. If it's something that has to do with entertainment, you might want to look at, you know, licensing, copyrights, and specific things like that. But generally, those things I have mentioned need to be covered in a business agreement.
Thank you so very much, Odun. Thank you so very much for shedding a lot of light on that. I have a question here for Funkola. It's from Olubukola. She would like to know, should a business be registered as a BN at the idea stage or converted to a PLC in future? Or can it be originally registered as a PLC? We have also, I'll just take them together. So we have Wale. I'm discussing a remote job with an American company. I wanted to find out what are my tax obligations to Nigeria and how will I go about it?
Okay, thank you for those questions. Sorry, first of all, rejoinder, I have to say, sorry, patent registration is for 20 years. So please forgive me, it wasn't 7 years. So it's for 20 years and it's typically not renewable. Okay, in answering the question about if you should register a business as a business name or straight as a PLC, I'll take it that Olubukola means a limited liability company because a PLC, a private limited liability company, because a PLC is a public limited company, which is usually traded on the stock exchange. And what that means is that you have over 50 shareholders. And so, you know, it's too big to be a private company and it has now become a public company. So I'll take the answer from the point of a private limited liability company. It's you can register, you can start out as a business name and then, you know, convert to a limited liability company, but ultimately it will depend on how you start the business. If you're the only founder or proprietor at that point, then it's fine, you can be a business name. And with the new karma as well, even though it hasn't you know, come into place in practice, you are able to register the company as a limited liability company as a solo shareholder and a solo director. So when that comes into place, you have the choice of registering directly as a private limited company and then you can continue to add people on as you go, or register as a business name if the objects of the business, so what you're doing doesn't require you to be a limited liability company, then you can register as a business name and then convert in the future. So there's a conversion process at the CAC where you shut down the business name and then you start off as, you know, they shut, anyway, pretty much you shut down the business name. It's a long process, but then you then start off as a limited liability company and you can continue to add on more shareholders and more directors as you go. The question on taxes, do you, somebody who's working with the remotely, right? Is that what it is, Larry?
Remotely with an American company.
Okay.
Nigerian government.
Okay. That person does have tax obligations to Nigeria, especially if they are sitting in Nigeria. So it doesn't matter that you're not working, your place of work, or rather your company that you work with is not in Nigeria. Your place where you sit and where you work is Nigeria, and so you do have tax obligations. Typically, you have to pay your pay as you earn tax to the state government where you work. So if you work in Lagos State, for example, your payee every month has to be paid to Lagos State. If you don't work with them as an employee and you're just a consultant, you still have tax obligations. So you pay your withholding tax. They withhold tax from your contracting fees, and then you pay withholding tax to the state where you also work. So yes, even if the company you work for is not in Nigeria, you have tax obligations on what you earn to the states that you work in. If you're working as a consultant and you're charging tax, it will depend on the kind of service, but it will depend on the kind of service if it's taxable. And if it's taxable, you have to bulk up, ask for VAT, and then you remit it to the FIRS in Nigeria.
Thank you so very much, Funkola. We'll just take, we acknowledge questions that are coming in. Thank you so very much for your questions. We have questions from Rex and we have questions from Osa. So we'll answer them, but we just want to run through our present questions before we get to that quickly. So we have this question from Jeka Nyolua. I hope I got that right. Jeka Nyolua and Tunji. So I'll just put the questions together. Jeka Nyolua is asking, what resources will be helpful to learn about equity for a founding company? And Tunji would like to know, what documents do I need to present to my prospective investors, and how do I draw up an agreement between a financial investor and a person? I'm guessing how to protect themselves when they have conversations with people that are interested in their businesses. Odun, would you please help answer this? Thank you.
Sure. So thanks, Jeka Nyolua, nice name. If you're raising equity investments, I'm going to be talking about both together because they're related. If you want to raise equity investment, the first thing is that following what Funkola said, you need to have a limited liability company. So you cannot raise equity investment with a business name, because one of the fundamental things of raising equity investment is you give equity to your investors. Equity means shares. So that means you have to have shares that you're able to give. You can't give shares in a business name. So the first step is, okay, have a limited liability company where you will be raising that investment in. Now, the things to look for before you start raising investment is you have to be in an investable state. Before an investor is going to invest in you, they're going to conduct something called a due diligence. There are different types of due diligences. There's legal due diligence, technical due diligence, financial due diligence, commercial due diligence. Commercial is the product viable as a service, profitable. Financial is to look at your existing books, and technical is if you're a tech-based solution, if your tech is for real. And then legal, of course, is your legal dealings. So in terms of legal due diligence, they're going to be looking at your filings. Are they up to date? What are your agreements? What's your shareholding? What's the cap table? Who are the current shareholders? Are there any investing provisions? And then these are all detailed issues, so I'm not going to go into them. Each one is like a 30-minute explanation, so I'm just going to list them. So what are your agreements? What are the have the intellectual property be assigned to the company? They're just going to be looking at that your legal dealings are in a good position. Now, where that is the case, you then begin to exchange documents. They might give you a term sheet. They might then, depending on whether it's a debt or equity investment, if it's debt or convertible debt, you sign a note purchase agreement or a promissory note. If it's equity, you look at things like shareholders agreement, share subscription agreements. We have some hybrid instruments in recent times, like the SAFE and the KISS. So basically, you just have to, the two things, any investment document, the two things you want to be aware of are the economic terms and control terms. All the terms in any investment are relating to that. Economic terms means how much am I giving for what? How much am I collecting for how many for the shares, or how much debt am I taking and what interest am I paying in return? Control terms have to do with decision making. What are there any decisions that need extra approval from the investor, or what are the board matters? Who sits on the board? Does the investor want a board? So generally, those are the things you want to look out for when you're raising funds or when you're raising investment.
Thank you very much, Odun. So we have exhausted our present questions, and we'll go right into the questions that have dropped in the course of this session. So we have the question from Osato. He would like to know, there are companies I have registered but didn't do anything with them. How do I close these businesses? He also wants to find out, if he doesn't formally close these businesses, what is the legal exposure to the directors? And finally, does the CAC do a cleansing where they deregister inactive companies? Alongside that is Rex's question. I would just also ask it out so that we can answer, because they pretty much just follow through. He wants to know, if the registered bank account for the businesses have not been receiving or paying out any funds for the years since the business stopped, would a formal business closure with the CAC still be required? So Funkola, I don't know, Funkola and Odun would please take this together. I don't know how you want to do it, but.
Okay, I'll take Osato's side, and then Odun can conclude the side on the bank accounts.
Okay.
So Osato, if your company is a limited liability company, I mean, even for a business name, I'll advise that you should wind up, but I'm just going to give a specific example with a limited liability company. Limited liability company is a separate human being from yourself. I'm saying human being, even though it's not human, but I mean, in the eyes of the law, is looked at as a completely separate legal entity. So God forbid, if you passed on today, whether the business is even operating or not, yes, it exists in perpetuity. So your existence is not tied to the business. So look at it that if I'm not dead, do I continue to breathe, eat, drink, things like that? Yes, that's exactly how your business is. So if you don't formally kill, wind down, put off the light on that business, it continues to have its obligations. It continues to exist as a separate legal entity. So you pretty much have to formally kill this entity. So you have to, it's advisable that you do the winding up procedures at the CAC. They're winding up procedures, and interestingly, I think our last newsletter was on this, so we can point you to resources after this. But yes, you do have to formally close the business. If you don't formally close the business, you still have obligations, like I said. And so these are tax obligations and annual filings obligations. So even though you're not trading, the FIRS still expects you to continue to make your monthly filings, even if it's nil returns to them every month. That said, you're also supposed to continue to audit the company's books, file this with with FIRS for tax clearance. You're also supposed to file your annual returns at the CAC every year. So if you don't shut down the business, then these obligations continue to inure. And yes, the CAC does deregister inactive companies. They do a cleansing. However, it doesn't mean that the obligations that have accrued still don't apply. So they don't do this as often as they should. I think 2 years ago, they struck some companies up, but these are companies that existed or stopped existing some 17, 18 years ago. So you don't want to wait that further down the line. So the advice is just to initiate proper winding up procedures. Audrey, over to you.
Thank you very much, Funkola.
Okay. Yeah, so my answer is very similar to the answer Funkola gave. Just as she explained, as long as you don't kill an entity, the entity still owes obligation. So even though as long as that bank account exists, and as long as that company exists, if you do not close that bank account, there are obligations. And as far as the CAC is concerned, the company is alive. So you do owe obligations to the CAC, whether you're making money or not. There are businesses that are not dead, but are not making money. You will be considered the same way, So whether the bank account is receiving funds, whether it is not receiving funds, you still need to formally close your business at the CAC. You're still responsible for the obligations, the statutory returns. You're also still responsible to the FIRS for your statutory obligations, even if they are nil returns. Nil returns is I didn't make any money, I am just filing, but I'm not paying anything. You're still responsible for those obligations. So it's better to just close the business.
All right, thank you so very much, Odu. I have a question here privately from Dante. He would like to know, do we offer services around licensing application with regards to financial services in Nigeria or West African countries? I think, Dante, we would send an email. If you could just drop your email address in the box below, we would send an email to you, and then we can take the conversation further beyond this place. We have to go now, but I hope it's been an exciting session. This is something we look forward to continuing as time progresses. So please look out for session 2.0, because we'll definitely be having that. Thank you very much again, Funkola, for making yourself available today. Thank you very much, Odun, for making yourself available. I hope we all learned wonderful things. For now, it's time to go. My name is Larry Adejibasharon. Thank you very much once again for your time. Bye, everyone.
Bye. Thank you for joining.